On a hospital loading dock at dawn, a supply manager smashes a delivery driver's lunch while accusing him of theft. A respiratory therapist risks her job by badging the man inside to wash up and eat, paying for it with a suspension. Quiet changes follow new bins, tape lines, and small gestures restoring a bit of dignity without fanfare. Before we dive in, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And, hey, where are you tuning in from? Leave your country in the comments. I love seeing how far these stories reach. He smashed the red cooler on the loading dock. The lid flew off and a Tupperware of rice burst open against the wet concrete. Orange sauce ran into the puddle by the drain. The older man who had carried it flinched and grabbed for it. He stopped when the man in the orange safety vest lifted a foot and pinned the soft cooler to the ground. He kicked the scattered food toward the drain. Plastic forks clacked on the grate. "We're missing gloves again," he said, voice tight from not sleeping. "Someone's been skimming. I'm done being nice." The older man started to speak, and the man in the vest waved the clipboard at him like a warning. Two guys with pallet jacks rolled past and pretended not to see. Page in blue scrubs stopped by the yellow stripe. Steam pushed from a vent and made the air smell like damp cardboard. It was not even 6. The sun was a pale smear over the parking garage. She had 7 minutes before report. Her throat felt dry. She looked at the clock on her badge. She had one final write-up in her file for snapping at a surgeon about mask fit. One more thing, and they could cut her hours. Rent was due Friday. Her mother's nebulizer had broken last week. She had told herself no more drama. She watched the older man reach for his cooler again with slow hands that shook. She moved between them and picked up the ruined cooler. It dripped sauce along her arm. "He's here for a delivery," she said, simple flat. "Let's check him in. You don't get to smash food." The man in the vest blinked at her like she had stepped into a road. She badged the side door and held it open. "Come in," she said to the older man. He hesitated, eyes on the vest. The man in the vest said, "Vendors don't go in that way." Paige didn't look at him. "You stomped his lunch," she said. "We're fixing that first." A camera hummed in the corner near the metal stairs. Security came quick, boots loud on the metal stairs. A guard with a radio on his shoulder looked from the cooler to the vest to Paige's badge on the reader. "You can't badge a contractor through a staff entrance," he said. It wasn't mean, just procedure. The man in the vest folded his arms. "She's interfering," he said. "We're missing cartons. I need control of my dock." The older man held his hands up like he was surrendering. They took her badge. The guard slid it off her lanyard and put it in a clear envelope like it was evidence. "You're not on the floor today," he said. "Go talk to your supervisor." Paige swallowed and nodded once. "Give me 5 minutes," she said. "He needs to wash his hands." The guard looked at the sauce running down her forearm and at the older man's shaking hands and let out a tired breath. 5, he said. Inside the break room, she ran warm water over his hands. The sink was small and the faucet had a nicked handle. He didn't say a word. He stood with his shoulders high like a person waiting for another blow. She found paper towels and dabbed a cut on one finger. He pulled his cap down and watched the stream. She bought oatmeal and a banana with her phone. The vending machine buzzed and dropped a cup. She filled it with hot water from the coffee maker. The older man sat at the corner of the table with a napkin under his elbow. She wiped sauce off the cooler with dish soap and a rough sponge, working fast so the guard wouldn't change his mind. Her scrub sleeve stuck to her skin. A folded sheet slipped from the mesh pocket. It landed face up on the table. "Renal Diet Guidelines," it said in block print. Under it, in a clear sleeve, was a schedule card stamped dialysis, with days and times marked in highlighter. The older man covered the papers with his palm, not shy, just done with people staring. His left forearm had a scar that looked like a seam. They ate without talking much. He took careful bites. He chewed slow, the way people do when every bite is counted. Paige called receiving from her phone and got a sleepy clerk who said bring him through the vendor window next time, not the dock. "Now?" she said. "Fine," the clerk said. "I'll sign for the pallets." She thanked him and hung up. The guard knocked on the break room frame. "Time?" he said. "I know," Paige answered. She put the cooler back together and tucked the folded sheet under the elastic again without looking at it. She handed the older man a clean paper bag and slipped the banana inside, then her own yogurt from her lunch. He started to protest. She pushed it across the table anyway. "Try the vendor window," she said. "It's around the corner by receiving." She walked him out to the hall. At the supervisor's office, she stood on the rubber mat and listened while the unit manager used words like breach and protocol and ongoing investigation. The man in the vest stood in the doorway for a minute, then left. Paige kept her answer short. Yes, she said. I badged him in. Yes, I touched him. He was covered in food. She signed a note acknowledging a one-day suspension, no pay. She texted her apartment mate to ask about a ride home. She texted her mum that she'd stopped by with soup. On the way out, she passed the older man at the vendor window, clutching his clipboard and a temporary visitor sticker on his jacket. His cooler was closed. He didn't smile. He lifted 2 fingers off the clipboard in a small thank you wave like people do from the steering wheel. She lifted 2 back and kept walking. That afternoon, she slept and then sat in a laundromat down the block and watched her scrubs swim in soapy water. A kid played a video too loud on her phone. Someone burned popcorn in the microwave. She thought about how it had felt, sauce cooling on her arm. She thought about the sound of the cooler when it hit. The next morning, she set an alarm for 4 and drove her mother to an early appointment. On the dash at a red light, she ate a granola bar. Her phone buzzed with a schedule change. They'd cut her Saturday overtime. Her stomach dropped and then settled. She thought about the older man's measured bites. She went back on Monday. Her badge was active again. When she walked past the dock on her break, the man in the vest was directing a forklift with 2 fingers, eyes on the tines. He looked tired in a different way. He didn't look at her. Next week, a clear bin labeled Dear River's belongings sat by the dock door. It had a hinged lid and a clean towel inside. Someone had wiped up the old sauce stain and laid out a rubber mat where the puddles always gathered. The bin wasn't fancy. It just existed. Tape marked a square where people could stand without the pallet jacks clipping their ankle. The square sat under a sign that said, Vendor check-in, and pointed toward receiving. It looked like tape on a grade school floor, bright and bossy. People followed it without thinking. The man in the vest showed up with a small dorm fridge on a dolly. He plugged it in by the time clock and stuck a simple sign on it. Lunch is okay here. No drugs. No perishables overnight. He caught Paige's eye by accident. He didn't smile. He lifted his chin once, a small nod that landed heavy, then went back to counting boxes with his clicker. At the coffee cart, 2 paper cups waited near opening time. Someone had written D. Rivers on them in marker. The barista, a student with sleep in her eyes, flicked the lids and then held an extra banana aloft when a truck backed in. No speeches, just an arm out. On her floor, people were a little less sharp for a few days. The unit manager added a line to the morning huddle, Vendors use the receiving window only. Be decent on the dock. It wasn't a policy so much as a sentence that lived in people's mouths. A surgical tech left a pile of spare hair nets by the door. A CNA taped a fresh sign on the fridge reminding people to write their names but also added a smiley face. Paige wondered about the older man for a while and then less. She saw him once in the hall near the elevator, carrying a box of saline bags on one shoulder. He had the temporary visitor sticker again. The red cooler rode at his hip. Zip. He moved steady, like a person who understands the cost of rushing. Paige thought about the sound the cooler made when it hit. It was dull and loud at once, the way some things break without pieces flying. If she had to pay for that sound with a Saturday overtime shift, it seemed fair. On her way out one night, she stood by the dock and looked at the yellow tape square and the clear bin and the little fridge, humming along. The sun had dropped behind the parking garage, but the sky was still light, and a thin stripe of it shone along the top edge of the red cooler where it sat, closed on the mat by the door.